Good evening, Linksfield and all our friends. Welcome to this exciting episode of Pesach this evening, on this rainy Joburg evening. How lucky are we that we could be at home? You guys get to be in your pajamas, but we had to get dressed for this. And we are really excited to be presenting Pesach 2021, some tips and tricks and insights and other stuff. So Pesach is arriving. Pesach is the season of miracles. And perhaps it would be apropos to share a word of gratitude to Hashem for this night, 5th of Elul, exactly this night 3 years ago. My husband and I experienced a personal miracle in this home. It was the night of our chaotic break-in, where we were harassed by some guys over here for about 3 hours or so.
Yeah. Small stuff.
And through Hashem's miracles and kindness, thank God, we came out intact and all the better from it, hopefully. And it only affected anything that could be replaced. Everything was replaceable, thank God. So that was our personal miracle on this night 3 years ago. And it's been a hard few weeks in the community, and so may it be that everybody experiences miracles, salvation, whatever it is that they need salvation from. And, sometimes we get very comfortable with life, and it's moments like these or weeks like these in the community where there's so much, such distressing events and so much heartache and pain that we remember that we're not comfortable in this life, and we beg Hashem enough already, and, take us out of this exile and bring us to the ultimate freedom, which is, when we'll all go live safely in Israel with the coming of Mashiach, and might be very speedily. So PG miracles for everybody. Now, let me just tell you something. My favorite holiday is Pesach. I love Pesach, and I am a Jewish woman. I am a Jewish woman, and I love Pesach, and I loved this holiday even as a kid. And let me tell you, my mom made us work really hard. So we didn't get a break from the, all the Pesach requirements. And even so, it was just my favorite holiday. I just remember, always thinking it's my favorite Yom Tov. Something about sitting around that Seder table with the family, with the guests, whoever was there, just felt so right. The tradition, the ritual, the meaning behind it, like everything that was just, going on just inside felt so right, so Jewish, so real, so meaningful. And, I'm just trying to think about, like, what was it that made it feel so good? So I don't really know, but every year, obviously, we experience it on a different level. We do the exact same thing, but we experience it on a different level. And ultimately, the message of the holiday is freedom. And I think something about the experience just being so Jewish, it is the ultimate Jewish experience, going through hell and coming out on the other side stronger. It's just, unfortunately, something that's been repeated in our history over and over again. But thank God for, for the miracles that come at the end, and for the strength and the character that comes out on the other side. And for me, every time I try to understand freedom on a different level, and this year thinking about it, what does freedom mean for me? I just think that freedom is when we are who we really are. To be ourselves is freedom. Now, some people think that, myself included, I may or may not have thought this too, that, how could you be free when you've got the Torah way of life, when you've got the Jewish way of life, dictating everything in your day, and everything, your holidays and your nights, and like every detail of your life, everything you eat, everything you wear, everything you do. How do you find freedom in that? Doesn't it seem the opposite? Isn't it so restrictive and so annoying? So perhaps, so as I said, perhaps these thoughts have crossed my mind as well, which they have. And more I've come to realize that there is no such thing as as absolute freedom outside of Torah. And what I mean by that is that if we don't have the restrictions of Torah in our life, we think we're free. But actually, what is dictating our choices, what is dictating what we wear, what we do, what we eat, is everything around us, and most notably our impulse. we have a bodily impulse and we've got emotional impulse and intellectual impulse. That's all, we think that's who we are, but it's not. That's layers of our personality, but it's not our core. And, when we just kind of go through life worshiping our impulse or serving our impulse or listening, obeying the impulse, we're actually limited. We're actually bonded to that impulse, which we think is who we are, but it's not. Every layer that is about us is external, and the only thing that is real and really who we are is our soul, because that is the core of who we are. That is the essence of who we are. And our soul is only happy, is only free when we listen to it and we do what it so badly desires, which is a connection to Hashem and kind of living life the way Hashem wants from us. So when we, and I really mean this, like more and more, I'm just coming to realize that the more Judaism I bring into my life, the more free, and the more, the opposite of that, where it's more like just go with the flow. It doesn't have that same good feeling. It doesn't feel right. It may feel easy. It may feel comfortable, but really, really, real meaning, real freedom is going to come when we make our soul shine. So PG, we should all experience freedom on some level deeper this year from that. Take this holiday of freedom, shed the heaviness, shed the burden of life and of trying to conform to everything else other than God, and bring Hashem into our lives, because that's going to make us, free to be me. Free to be me really is my soul, my neshama. So that's my insight for tonight. And now I'll call on the next speaker. So,
what am I addressing?
Okay. So thank you, Chaya, for those amazing insights. You're welcome. And this year, 2021, is an unusual Pesach, and I'm going to present the problem to you. What is unusual, and this is actually why we set up the Zoom, because, this is a very, very confusing year. What is so confusing about this year? So let me put the picture on the table. Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, falls on Shabbos. So Pesach is Saturday night. The first Seder is going to be Saturday night, which means Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, and that is very confusing, and I'll tell you why. So number one, there is a mitzvah to burn the chametz on Erev Pesach. How are we going to do that if Erev Pesach is Shabbos? Because it is forbidden to burn anything on Shabbos. Number two, there is a custom for the firstborns to fast on Erev Pesach. And if Erev Pesach is Shabbos, we don't fast on Shabbos because we do nothing to interfere with the joy of Shabbos. So what are the firstborns going to do? Big problem. I'm not a firstborn, but my husband's a firstborn. So.
And our son is.
Yeah, he might be wondering, what's he going to do? More about firstborns later if there's time. Anyways, moving on. See, this is a biggie. On Erev Pesach, we are not allowed to eat chametz throughout the day. We only have a few hours in the morning where we are allowed to eat chametz. And I believe this year it's till 10 o'clock in the morning is the final time that we are allowed to eat chametz. Now, the trouble comes in because it's Shabbos. And on Shabbos, it is a mitzvah to have a meal where we vas and eat bread or challah. So how are we going to do that this year? How are we going to have a Shabbos meal if we have to be done with chametz so early in the morning? And what other problems have we faced with? I'm sure there's many problems. Everything is complicated. Yeah, the night before Pesach is called Bedikat Chametz. It's the time when we hide those 10 pieces of bread, customary to hide 10 pieces of bread well wrapped around the house, and to go around with a feather and a candle and go search for the chametz and make sure the chametz is out. How are we going to do that on Friday night? We wouldn't be able to touch a candle and do those kind of things on Friday night. So it gets a little bit complicated. How do we do Shabbos? How do we do Shabbos normally if it's Erev Pesach? And how do we do the Erev Pesach normally if it's Shabbos? So these are very, very perplexing, confusing problems that we are faced with this year. Now, let me just tell you something interesting. The last time, this is unusual because it's very rare for Erev Pesach to fall out on Shabbos. Am I right? When was the last time such a thing happened?
We weren't married yet.
See, so we've never experienced this in our home. Yeah, I believe it was, how long? 12, 13 years ago, the last time that the timing of Erev Pesach fell out on Shabbos. So personally, in running my own Pesach home, I've never been faced with this massive problem.
You seem overwhelmed.
Very overwhelmed. Very, very overwhelmed. In fact, I'm going to hand over to you because it's getting difficult to speak.
So first of all, well done on the VART. Second of all, at the risk of information overload, I'm going to try to go through the system of what we do bite size. I actually gave this course a taste of it on Shabbos to a few gentlemen. And what I realized after giving it is that it's a lot of information. So I'm not going to give every technicality. I want to give the basics, and feel free to reach out to me or to Google it. It's all over for information in specifics. So let's start with the basics. It's a 3-day Chag this year. Why? Because Pesach starts Saturday night, and the 24 hours of Shabbos before that, you cannot prepare for the coming Chag. You can't prepare for Shabbos, on Shabbos for the next day, which leads to a few questions. So then when am I preparing for the Seder? As Chaya said, I can't light a fire on Shabbos. So when do I burn the chametz? I can't look for the chametz. I can't fast. So what usually happens in a 24-hour period this year is going to be split out in a 72-hour period. So what usually would just happen on what we call Erev Pesach, the day, the 24 hours before Pesach, now will be split to Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. And if you're taking notes, it's simple, but if you want to just take notes to hold your head, it might help you. Here it is. On Thursday, we do one thing, and that is the firstborns fast. Why do the firstborns fast in general? Because, as a firstborn myself, all Jewish firstborns were spared at the night of the original Pesach 3,300 years ago, when God killed the firstborn Egyptians and other nationalities and spared the Jewish firstborns. So as an act of gratitude to Hashem and atonement to the fact, whatever, that, we might have been deserving of it, but he spared us, we fast. It's become the Jewish custom that the fast doesn't last very long. This is the only fast that the way to knock it out is by going to shul in the morning and hearing a siyum, hearing a completion of a piece of Talmud. Everyone says Mazel Tov. You have a bite to eat, and the fast is over. Or you go to a bris, a circumcision, any other simcha, and that itself would also knock out the fast. But the fast will happen this year, not on the day before Pesach, which is Shabbos. You're not allowed to fast on Shabbos. You'll fast on Thursday. Now, this is a firstborn, whether to father or mother. It's a firstborn Kohen, Levi, all firstborn men will fast. Again, if they hear a siyum, if they go into the shul and they hear something of learning, and they hear a kaddish after that, Mazel Tov, they don't have to fast. Now, they could have fasted on Friday, but Friday leads into Shabbos, and unless you have to, we prefer not to make people fast on Friday. If Pesach would start on Shabbos, which it does, a few years ago it started on Shabbos, maybe even last year, then we would fast on Friday. But because we're anyways knocking it out, it's not being on its regular day Shabbos, we knock it 2 days back, not to Friday, we knock it to Thursday. So Thursday, if you're a firstborn, that's the time you show up to shul for the siyum. But other than that, there's not much. But then comes Thursday evening. And Thursday evening is the last evening before Pesach starts that you can actually do muktzah. You can turn on candles, you can do all things that you shouldn't be doing on Shabbos. So therefore, what usually we would do the night before Pesach, which is looking for the chametz, we actually look for the chametz Thursday night, not Friday night. And I actually want to describe this looking of the chametz because it's something that is not well known, although it is a part of Jewish law. It's a funny thing until when you hear about it. But I would encourage you, especially if you have children and grandchildren, it's a lovely, it's not even a custom, it's a lovely law. And what the basic principle of looking for chametz is, as it gets dark, at about, let's say, 7-ish or 6:45, you take a candle, not a flashlight, take a candle. Custom is that you also take a wooden spoon and a feather, and you start with your Haggadah. You'll actually open to your Haggadah the first page, and it will say, make a blessing for checking of chametz. You make the blessing, and then you start searching. The issue is you have to make sure you find something, because if you searched and you didn't find, it's kind of, the question is, did you actually do a mitzvah? So it's become the Jewish custom, and it's already discussed in the Talmud, to put out pieces before, but not the same person, unless there's nobody else in the house. In other words, if I'm living alone at home, I'll go put out the pieces and then I'll go look for them. But if there's somebody else living at home, so you kind of play a hiding and seek game where they go put out the pieces and the other person goes and looks for them. Now, there are many stories that happen where you forget where the piece goes. So the recommendation is, if you're putting out the pieces, write it down on a paper where it is, or have a very good memory. Also, make sure it's not a place that the mice or any other rodent in your that's joined the family population at home doesn't eat it. You want to make sure you find all 10 pieces. So my kids, usually what happens is, when I'm going to Mincha Ma'ariv, when I'm going to the evening services, the shul, Chaya will then prepare 10 small pieces of bread and wrap it very well in paper, maybe even tape or glad wrap, and then the kids will go put it around the house, then write down on the paper where they put it in. I come in, they start giggling. My gosh, does Tati know where it is? And then we make the bracha and we start walking around the house with the candle. I turn off the lights in each room I come in so I could actually see, could actually focus the candle at different places and try to find chametz. The point is not only to look for the 10 pieces, but to look for other stuff as well. And sometimes you'll find, on the bookcase, you're going around looking. We don't really clean our bookcase for Pesach. There's not much chametz that goes there, but you might just be passing by, and that's an opportunity to take the chametz and wrap it.
Can I interrupt for a second? So when we were little, we used to play this hide and seek game, and for some reason, we used to wrap the bread in silver foil. Let me tell you, it's a bad idea. Don't do that, because then you take the silver foil to the fire the next day, you try to burn and it doesn't burn. So newspaper, paper, or masking tape, great options. To wrap a literally like a couple crumbs or very, very small piece of bread, wrap it well, because you don't want the crumbs to spread into your freshly cleaned Pesach home.
Yeah, and in New York, they came with a great invention. They make the pieces for you, and then they charge you $20 for it, and people actually buy it.
Exactly, and people actually buy it. They also sell salt water.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually, if in New York, if you go to the store, they'll sell you salt water. And what's amazing is people buy it rather than take water, put in the bowl.
And for like $3 for like,
and pour salt themselves, they'll buy salt water. So Jews have figured out a good way to make a buck.
Make money, yeah.
Yeah, so you put out the 10 pieces, you go look for it. Doesn't take too long, hopefully, but it's actually an obligation to do it. Even if you left your house, let's say you went to a hotel for Pesach, you would have to do it the night before you went out. You check for chametz. It's an obligation that each homeowner has. Fine, we finish.
So that's Thursday night.
Yeah, Thursday night, I take each piece I find, I take the feather, put the piece with the feather on the spoon, put the spoon in the bag. Again, you don't have to get so technical. It is cute. The kids will often come home from school with all these items, but it's just a nice, it's a very strong memory in kids. Like, I remember growing up with it every single year, going around the house with my father. My kids will remember it with me. It's just a beautiful way to bring in Pesach, which this year we're going to do Thursday night. Then, once you finish, you wrap the bag up, you put it in a place that's safe. Next day is Friday morning. Remember, Pesach only starts 36 hours later. Pesach does not start that night. But nevertheless, the custom is to burn the chametz in the morning. Each year we burn the chametz on the eve of Pesach in the morning, the day of Pesach in the morning, because at a certain stage of the day, you can no longer have chametz in your house. So therefore you burn it early. This year, technically, you could have chametz throughout the whole Friday till Shabbos morning. But because the rabbis didn't want us to get into a bad routine of burning the chametz late, it's customary this year also to burn the chametz sometime before 10:30 a.m. It's also a thing that it's just worth discussing for a second. It's not a big mission. Often people get overwhelmed by it. You don't have to burn your whole house down. You literally take a pan, put some paper, light it, put the bag of chametz that you checked, that you found last night, light the fire, try to get in a place that's not too windy, and let it burn. And then you'll all smell like fire. It's great. It's fantastic. You go take a shower. It's not a big deal. And you say, usually you would say the words kol chamira v'chamio, which is a declaration that the chametz is gone and it's not mine anymore. But the truth is this year, you're not going to do it because the chametz is still yours, the chametz in the house, because you still have to use it later on that day. So you're only going to say that statement that you'll find in your Haggadah. You'll see a section, burning of chametz. That section, you'll only say the next day at about 10:30 Shabbos morning. You'll take out your Haggadah and you'll say, fine, you burned your chametz. After that, there's not much else to do. However, hopefully by then you've sold your chametz, because at this stage, the rabbis are going to be sitting with the non-Jew and selling the chametz on your behalf. I actually saw this year, quite interesting, that rabbis of Europe reached out to the chief rabbi of Israel, and they arranged that this year the chief rabbi of Israel is going to sell chametz on behalf of all Jews around the world, even those who didn't. So obviously it's best case scenario to do it yourself, but if you forgot to do it, at least the chametz is sold this year on your behalf, which again, it's not ideal, but it is done. So there is on the UOS website, go, just type in your address, your name, your chametz is sold. Try to do it this week already. I didn't do mine yet, so I'm going to try to do it tonight. Get it over with, and they'll all sell it on Friday morning. Fine. Friday, you could still eat chametz. The problem is, you want to eat chametz, where are you going to eat chametz? Because at the same stage on Friday, you're setting up for the Seder tomorrow night, on Shabbos night. Remember, you cannot prepare on Shabbos for the next day. By the way, that's the reason you never tell a joke to an Englishman on Shabbos. You can't prepare for the next day. So on Friday, we're going to set up the Seder. So that means whatever chametz you're having should not be anywhere near your dining room, anywhere near your kitchen. By now, you've pretty much cooked for Pesach. So it will be on your porch, it will be on your patio, it will be somewhere safe where you could still enjoy your chametz full on Friday afternoon. Comes Friday evening. Shabbos. Now, it's an unusual Shabbos. Pesach's not here yet. On the other hand, you cannot burn the chametz any longer. Shabbos pretty much comes and freezes you. You cannot prepare for Pesach. You're kind of in a gray area because you're in Pesach, but you're not in Pesach. So this is how it plays out. Friday night, regular. Come to shul, have a regular shul service, regular davening, nothing different. Come home, have a meal. Now, practically, you can have, in theory, you can have a chametz meal, totally chametz. You make kiddush, you vas, you have challah, kitka, and you could have a full-on, chametz meal. The issue is, where are you cooking it? Where are you buying it? Unless you have a chametz kitchen, which then it's very convenient. You could enjoy a chametz meal. And if you have that kitchen, I would recommend it because you're going to be eating so much Pesach food in the next few days, you might want to have your last bite of chametz. But for those of us who only have one kitchen and it's just not practical, other than the kitka, the rest of the meal is going to be a Pesach meal. Whatever you prepared for the next day, you're going to already start eating tonight. So by the time the 72-hour Chag happens, you'll be plotzing from Pesach food. So that night, you have a regular Shabbos meal. Again, you can eat whatever you want in theory. Practically, it is going to be a bit complicated to have chametz. Now, let's talk about knedlach. Can you have a knedel that day? So according to many customs, the answer is yes. According to others, they say that it's too similar to matzah, and you're not supposed to have matzah in the 24 hours before leading up to Pesach, so therefore don't have knedels. But if you want to have knedels, go enjoy your knedels. Fine. Have a meal, have a good night's sleep. Wake up the next morning, early. It's the only time that shul davens on a Shabbos morning very early. When I mean very early, some shuls are davening at 6 a.m. We're not that meshuggah. We're going to daven at 7 a.m. And the whole service is going to be done by 8:45, 9 the latest. So that means you're showing up to shul at 10 o'clock, you're walking into an absolutely empty, dead building.
And there'll be no bracha boxes this year.
No bracha boxes.
This week.
Yeah.
I mean, that week.
And what we're going to encourage people to do is at 8:45, 9 o'clock, whoever came to shul, and please do to make sure we have a minyan. We encourage, go home. Remember, chametz has to be finished by 10 a.m. So you have 1 hour to make it home, make your kiddush. For those who don't know, we don't only make kiddush on Friday night, we make kiddush by Shabbos day. Shabbos day kiddush is much simpler than Friday night. You pretty much take a cup of wine, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen, and drink it, and that's your kiddush. You can say a few verses before that, but fundamentally, if you just make the bracha, you did the mitzvah. You made kiddush. You make kiddush, then you have to vas. What do you vas on? It has to be chametz. Why does there have to be chametz? Because you cannot eat matzah on the day of Pesach. You have to have an appetite that night for Pesach. Some people will not eat matzah the 2 weeks leading up to Pesach, and some people will not eat matzah the 30 days leading up to Pesach just to develop the appetite. So you have to make it on something that's chametz. The Beth Din recommends to do it on pita because it's not as crummy as kitka. Because again, it's such a fine line. By 10 o'clock, you can no longer have chametz, and by 10:30, all chametz has to be disappeared, locked up, flushed down the toilet, or put in your cupboard. So because it's such a fine timeline, you make your kiddush quickly, you eat a little, whatever, you eat a certain amount of pita, so it's not too crummy, and then the rest of the meal is Pesach. There is another option, quite an expensive option. Rather than doing pita, you could have egg matzah. Egg matzah, what it offers you is you're not allowed to actually use egg matzah for the Seder, so it's not really matzah that you shouldn't have an appetite for. It doesn't make a difference. In other words, you're allowed to eat it. It's not considered matzah that you could eat at a Seder. So they actually sell egg matzah. It's quite expensive. But if you want to use it that morning, you can, and it's not chametz. So that's the upside. The upside is that it's not chametz. You don't actually have to clean up after yourself because it's kosher Pesach, but you're allowed to eat it.
So the last time, you reminded me, the last time this timing fell out of Erev Pesach on Shabbos, I must have been in my teenage years. And I had braces. Now, braces on my teeth. Now, braces was the big problem because if you eat challah on that day, then you might get challah stuck in your braces and you don't want, any bits of challah falling through your mouth on Pesach. So the actual, the solution at the time was the egg matzah. That it's not considered matzah, so it's not ruining your appetite for the matzah later that evening. It's not considered matzah, yet it's not considered chametz. That was the solution. So if anyone is in the same predicament, go buy yourself a box of the egg matzah.
The other issue is usually on the Erev Pesach, on the Eve of Pesach, after you finish eating your chametz, you'd go brush your teeth. Some people, if you really want to get fanatical, you first brush your teeth with the chametz toothbrush, and then you brush your teeth again with the new Pesach toothbrush. You could drive yourself crazy. On Shabbos, it's not so simple to brush your teeth. There's different customs, but the majority of rabbis are not comfortable, definitely not if it has paste on it, etc. So the recommended thing is to rinse the mouth before the time runs out. We have to stop eating chametz at 10, and about a half an hour after that, we have to get chametz rid out of our vicinity. So during those few minutes, you would go rinse your mouth, clean yourself up if you have any crumbs on you, and only then sit down for the rest of the meal, have your kosher Pesach meal, and then you bench. You don't have to bench before the like right after the challah. You can eat your kitka, you can eat your whatever, egg matzah, pita, and then continue with the meal.
So the recommendation is to bring as minimal amount of chametz into the house that the family members would eat.
Yeah, preferable not even in the house. Do it on your porch.
On the porch.
Like you don't want chametz in your house. So like.
And ideally you want it all to be eaten because that's
correct. So literally have exactly what you plan on giving out. So like if you plan on, you have a family of 2, I don't know, have 1 or 2 pitas.
Or 2 small challah rolls, 1 for each person.
Yeah, eat it in a bag, and whatever you didn't finish, pour it down the toilet, flush, and the chametz is gone. And as I said earlier, you then open your Haggadah and you say the words Kol Chamira v'Chamia. It's just 2 lines in Aramaic, which pretty much is a declaration that whatever chametz I do have left over is hefker. It's ownerless. It's not mine. And then you go sit down, as I said, and you have a regular meal of Pesach food. Yeah. Now, it's a funny time. In general, the day of Pesach is a funny time. Why? Because you're not allowed to eat chametz, but it's not Pesach yet. So like often when you ask people how long Pesach is, they'll tell you 8 days, but it's not. It's 8.5 days because the morning of Pesach only starts in the evening. 8 hours earlier, you already stopped eating chametz, but you're not allowed to eat matzah because you have to have an appetite. There's the custom not to eat apples because you have apples in your charoset or pears or nuts. You can absolutely drive yourself nuts with all this, like with the stuff you can't eat. And yeah, I've always found that day to be quite irritating. So on Shabbos, it's actually different because you cannot prepare for the Seder now. You're kind of stuck. So you're kind of in a time warp. You cannot wash your lettuce. You cannot dry your lettuce. You cannot make your charoset. You cannot do anything. Pretty much everything should have been done on Friday or Saturday night once Shabbos comes out, which is about 7 p.m., 10:02. So that's a perfect time to read, to sleep. Obviously, you want to have a nice nap, but also to read about Pesach. It's a very unusual circumstance this year that you could come into Pesach relaxed. You actually can't, you can't come in too stressed. I mean, what are you going to be stressed about? There's absolutely nothing you can do on Shabbos. Whatever you did, it's too late. And even if you have things left over, you're only going to do them that evening. So it's actually a blessing in a way. So you could come into Pesach so well rested, so relaxed. You show up, Matzah Shabbos, you come to Shul, and then you have your Seder. Practically, if you still have stuff to set up, don't come to Shul. The second Shabbos is out, is when the time you're going to actually start setting up the Seder.
So that's making me feel much better. I was very stressed before, but you're saying that this year we can come to our Seder well rested, relaxed, well read, all the amazing insights to share at the Seder table.
I grew up with my mother, and then I met my mother-in-law, and pretty much, at least for them, I can't talk for every Jewish woman, first night Pesach is shlaf night. You're sitting by the Seder and you're knocked out of your mind. You're not enjoying a minute of it. You're just waiting because you tortured yourself till literally that day. And this is an unusual circumstance. No matter how fanatical you are as a Jewish woman to drive yourself crazy in Pesach cleaning and Pesach prep, there's nothing you could do. So grab this opportunity.
So double the stress on Friday, but then Shabbos you get to.
Yeah, and then you show up. You know, we're going to daven Ma'ariv when Shabbos comes out. It's a very quick service on both nights of Pesach, which is Saturday night and Sunday night. So very quick service. There are some people that actually say the whole Hallel on the evenings, but that's not the Ashkenaz custom. So it's a very short service. It's the Chag service. In the art school, it would start on page 330. You would say the blessing, you'd say the Shema, then Amidah, you would turn to page 660. And I know it by heart, not because I've announced it 500 times. And in that Amidah, you would see a section that says on Saturday night, it's under the line, you'd say Patodienu on Saturday night, you would say that prayer, and that pretty much is done. You finish with Aleinu, and that's the service. Then you start to have the Seder as relatively as quick as possible. When you start the Seder, what you're going to do unusual is you're going to make Kiddush, like we all start a Seder. Step number 1 is Kaddish, you do the Kiddush, but you're going to also do Havdalah. But you'll see it, it's in the actual Haggadah. You'll see a section, it's usually in gray, saying if Pesach is Saturday night, say the following. Remember, by now you should have lit the candles for Chag. You cannot light the candles for the Chag until Shabbos is out. So you lit the candles, you're going to look at those candles, and you're going to bless Barei Marei Esh, the blessing on fire. And going forward, after that, the Seder is pretty much exactly the same like every year. There's just one tiny difference for the sake of technical, that just before you wash your hands for matzah, at the end of Magid, there at the final blessing, Asher Ge'alanu, you'll see that it says on Saturday night, you switch around min azvachim or min apsachim to min apsachim min azvachim. It's just like which sacrifices is mentioned first. On Saturday night, you do it differently than every other night of the week. But other than that, the Seder goes absolutely regular.
So back to the candles, the pre-existing flame, is that necessary this year?
Absolutely. There's no way. The truth is that because it's Yom Tif, you could technically get the flame elsewhere. Let's see, because you could, if your domestic lights the fire and you're cooking that night, you could technically take the fire from there to light your candle, but the custom is to light a 24-hour candle. And maybe this year it's even more practical to light a 48-hour candle because you're going to need it for Saturday night and again for Sunday
So
night.
we can't strike any matches
You tell me.
for the night. Yeah, I'm just confirming.
Yeah, you can't strike a match, but you can make a flame bigger. So in other words, the domestic can turn on the flame, but you can actually make the flame bigger, but you cannot make the flame smaller on a Yom Tov. So at least the gift is, because it's not Shabbos anymore, the food could be warm. You can heat up the soup, you can pretty much do whatever you need to do, because on a Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook.
Right, and ideally all this food should be prepared on the Friday because we don't want to make our Seder start too late. You know?
And you don't want to spend the whole Seder in the kitchen cooking while the Seder is going on. Now, let's talk about the Seder for a moment. Even though the Seder happens every single year, I think there's certain points we should mention. Unfortunately, this year and last year, we couldn't have a public Seder. It became a very strong ritual in our community. But here's a few things I want to point out. If you want to do the most bare bones Seder, okay, you're the kind of person that you don't have patience to do the 3-hour, 2-hour version. What's the basics of the night? This is where people get confused. They think that it's about torturing yourself and then going to sleep. No, the bare bones of the night is eat matzah, talk a little bit about the Chag, and if possible, have 4 cups of wine. But even if you went for the bare bones, in other words, like the minimal, talk a little bit about Pesach and eat matzah. Those are the 2 biblical commandments of the night. Everything else is rabbinic. It's important. I'm not saying don't do it. I'll do it, and I hope you do it as well. But if you know yourself that you don't have the patience, the hasnishtig adult, you don't have the zitz flesh to actually go through the Seder, then at least do that. Eat a matzah. How much matzah should you be eating tonight? At minimum, half, a third to a half of a shmura matzah or a full square matzah. Now, here's my time to punt. See, I bought a lot of matzah this year, about 25,000 rand worth of matzah for the community this year, and I still have a lot to give out. So feel free to reach out and get your shmura matzah, whether you can afford it or not, that's fine. It's anyway sponsored on the most part. And this is the Bentley of shmura matzah, of matzah. Why? Because it's handmade, it's watched from the beginning, and we're told that there's special blessings that come with specifically handmade shmura matzah. The Zohar says, the Kabbalistic text, that it brings healing and it brings faith. And this year we designed beautiful Linksfield Shul boxes that's coming back from the printer on Friday with our logo and everything. And if you order matzahs from us, you'll get in a beautiful Link Shul box. Here's a matzah. It's a bit cracked, but this is what the matzah looks like. This is made in Ukraine. It's brought on a boat each year. There's a box like that I showed you has 18 matzahs in it, and it goes for about 550 rand.
So is this the matzah that Moses ate? Would it have looked like this?
Yeah, because practically he didn't have machines, and if you had to roll the dough, it wouldn't come out square; it would come out round.
Isn't that cool?
So
How many years
interesting.
later?
3,300. Now, interesting. My grandparents. I know I talk a lot about my grandparents. They grew up. My mother was born in the Soviet Union, and there wasn't exactly matzah accessible. So my grandfather used to bake matzahs in his own house. He actually had a matzah oven, and that's how he made a bit of a living, because what the few religious Jews in Moscow area used to buy matzah from him. So he used to collect flour throughout the year, try to store it in a frozen space, and then bake matzahs leading up to Pesach in his basement. He also had a mikveh in his basement. He had a full-on Jewish institution going on, but baking matzahs. Today, baking matzahs is a full-on industry. There's millions of matzahs that are baked, both machine matzah and handmade matzah. Matzah is a huge industry. So during the Seder, remember, matzah, talk a little bit about Pesach. If possible, have the 4 cups of wine. And the 4 cups of wine should kind of be spread out, one at the beginning, one after you spoke a bit about the Seder, one when you bench, and one at the end of Haggadah. If you're not up to a 4-hour Seder, you can do the Seder in an hour and a half. You really can. The part that actually drags the longest for most people, interestingly, is the meal. That's when people actually start dragging it. But again, that's not God's problem. It's not the rabbi's problem. That's our Yentishef problem. In other words, we enjoy each other's company and it's great. But I actually believe in finishing the Seder quickly so that you could actually enjoy it till then and then sit. You don't have to rush out the second the Seder is done. Finish the Seder, let's say if you started it at 7:30 the first night. Second night you could start a bit earlier, but the first night you, let's say, started at 7:30. You could be finished by 10:15, even earlier. And then sit. But at least then you know that you did the ritual part and you enjoyed the whole thing. Because what happens is otherwise, most of us have only like a 2-hour, 2.5-hour span that we can actually tolerate it. But because we drag out the meal, by the time it comes to the final part, halal nirtza, benching, killed me first. But it's actually a beautiful part of the Haggadah. It's a beautiful part. We sing, there's various songs. If you've been in shul, you'll know various Hallel songs. Hodul Hashem, Odecha Ki Ani Tani. You could sing all those songs. Then at the end of the Seder, you have the Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. You have Echad Miyodea, one who knows one, all that stuff. You want to still enjoy it. So don't drag out everything. Keep it moving so that the full Seder package can be experienced. Now, living in the diaspora, as you know, we have 2 Seders. In Israel, this year, they don't have a 3-day Chag, they have a 2-day Chag. They have Shabbos, Saturday night, Sunday night, the Chag is over, they go into Chol HaMoed. Obviously, they cannot have chametz, but they don't have to go do the whole Seder again. We do it again. And I just want to spend a few seconds saying why we do it again. Because some people feel like they're shortchanged in the diaspora, and because we live here, we have to do it double. So interesting. It started already in the time of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. And it boils down to the calendar. You see, the Jewish calendar today is a fixed calendar. We could tell you exactly when's the next time Pesach will be on a Saturday night. It's actually in 4 years' time. And my wife tells me the next time after that is many decades. But once upon a time, the calendar was much more flexible. It wasn't as stable. It depended very much on when people saw the moon. If the moon came out on day 1, then they called Rosh Chodesh the beginning of the new month today. Otherwise, it was the next day. So there was always the month could either be 30 days or 29 days, depending on if people witnessed a sliver of the moon. Now, it wasn't just people seeing the moon. It had to be then brought to the main Beth Din in Jerusalem and certified. The moon was seen. Mazel Tov. It's Rosh Chodesh. It's a new month. But what if I lived in diaspora? How quickly am I going to find out that they declared Rosh Chodesh? How do I know if the previous month was 30 days or 29 days? I don't. Remember, there's no email. It's on horseback during war years. Chances are it could take a very long time to find out. So therefore, it became the custom that outside of Israel's borders, you keep 2 days of Chag. However, the rabbis, after the temple was destroyed and we had a regular calendar, felt that it's important to still keep that tradition. And the sages, the mystics tell us that actually there's something very powerful about the second day that even the first day doesn't have. And what is that? You see, the second day is celebrated in diaspora. It's celebrated almost only because of the destruction of the temple. If the temple wasn't destroyed and we were not dispersed all over the world, we would not have it. So it symbolizes the fact that God chased us out, but we still come back to him. So like I remember hearing one time the analogy, it's like a couple that after the first fight, the love can actually grow. Until the first fight, they haven't been tested. After the first fight, but we never fight. After the first fight, then what's that? Then they are bound together, and that's what the second day of Chag symbolizes. Now you come to shul the next day. It's a regular Shabbos davening, pretty much for the Chag. We say the Hallel. And on the first day, we stop praying for rain and we go to the prayer of Tal. Tal is the prayer that we ask Hashem for dew. It's a special nusach that's done, but you could do it at home. It's on page 702 in your siddur. If you're not coming to shul, you'll pray for Tal. And after that, we no longer pray for rain in the Amidah. Because in Israel, it's no longer the rainy season. The truth is in Joburg, it's no longer the rainy season. In Cape Town, it is. But because Israel, it's no longer the rain season, therefore we stop praying for rain. We just pray for dew, enough to keep the ground moist and going. Sunday day, we have a regular Chag meal, make kiddush, vas, on, eat, enjoy the matzah. You cannot prepare on Sunday for Sunday night because you cannot prepare from one day of the Chag to the next. Come Sunday night, the Chag is over, and we light the candles from the flame, the pre-lit flame, and we start the whole Megillah again. And we start Pesach again. True story. Now, here's an interesting thing you might not know. It's about Purim. The Purim story, Esther made the Jewish people fast for 3 days as begging Hashem to save them. You know when those 3 days were? The 3 days, the third day was actually the first day of Pesach. So that year, no Jew had a Seder on the first day of Pesach because all Jews fasted. And the next day is the day that Haman was hung on the gallows. So to commemorate that, the custom is to eat an extra food. So on the second day of Pesach, which is pretty much Monday day, the custom is to eat something extra as a commemoration of the Purim miracle that happened thousands of years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. At this stage, we pretty much covered what we have for the mitzvahs of the day, and we're more than welcome to ask for questions. If anybody has something, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. I'm going to shut the recording in case any of you are shy, or you can text. But again, you could also reach out to Chaya and myself throughout the week leading up to Pesach. I have to say, I'll stop